Welcome to Season 5 of the Questions With podcast, hosted by Quest Ventures, the top venture capital fund in Asia. I am your host, Linh, and in this season, we are diving into Vietnam's vibrant tech startup scene, particularly how innovation is driving impact and sustainability. Join me as we explore how this emerging Southeast Asian nation is embracing technological and scientific advancements, all while building a more sustainable future. All right. Today's guest is Hiep Nguyen, the Chief Operating Officer and founding team member of iHay, one of Vietnam's fastest growing AI-powered research and Q&A platforms. Launched in 2022 and built entirely by Vietnamese engineers, iHay has quickly become one of the country's most popular educational AI applications, surpassing 10 million downloads by 2025. Under Hiep's leadership, iHay has focused on making artificial intelligence accessible, practical, and culturally relevant for everyday users in Vietnam. The platform's user-friendly interface can handle vague or incomplete Vietnamese queries, making it approachable even for those who aren't tech savvy, while its social features create a vibrant community-driven knowledge base. By offering premium features for free, iHay ensures that AI benefits as many people as possible, regardless of income level or educational background. In this conversation, we'll dive into Hiep's journey of co-building iHay, his vision for democratizing AI in Vietnam and beyond, what it takes to localize cutting-edge technology for millions of users, and his perspective on leading with both innovation and inclusivity. And Hiep, thank you so much for joining us today. We are very, very excited to learn more about your journey from, born and raised in Ho Chi Minh City, moved to the US, and then back to the country. So, I want to make sure that I pronounce the name of the company correctly. Is it AI or iHay? And maybe share with us a little bit more about.
Yeah. So that's actually a good point that you made. So usually people call it AI Hey, but the real name is I Hey. So technically it's a wordplay. It's I in Vietnamese is who, and Hey means good. So who's good? If you use us, you're supposed to be smarter, better, good, just good. So that's the wordplay behind it.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you get a lot of questions, from your non-Vietnamese audience or investors about the name, and how do you come up with this?
So usually I would kind of contradict what they're saying. They would call it AI Hey. I would just say I Hey, and they will ask me the question. So I guess I debated it a bit of it. But I think the point is, we're, as much as we try to tell people that we're an AI company, we try to also not say that we're an AI company. That it should be something that you feel as you use the product, and it should be, AI first, whatever that means to you, right?
Right. So I know that you began your early career working for an investment firm, overseeing operations, partnerships, and investor relations. So how did your early experience in this field shape your approach to entrepreneurship and operation and growth at
I think I was very lucky in the sense that I think I graduated university and went straight into finance. And then after a very brief period in New York, I went also straight to VC in Singapore. And the idea here is it was the year that I started VC, which is around 2022, where the number of investment and deal velocity within Southeast Asia was probably the most out of any of the past years or even decades, right? And because of that, I got experience with a lot of deals. I believe I was involved either supporting or leading about 16 investment in the year of 2021, which was a lot. And I don't think I was even close to one of the most deployed folks out there. So because of that, we went through, first of all, I got mentored by a number of very amazing investors, Melissa, Ho, Ajay, Kano, all these folks at Wavemaker really helped me. And it also put me in a position where I can view what an investor view, right? Simple things like what to look for in a founder, or like fund returner math, all these stuff really framed how I view a company that's not just worth building, but a company that's generational in a sense, right? When it comes to operations and like the stuff that I do now here, honestly, it's all learning from scratch. Nothing on the investment side could be brought operationally to the startup side. It just doesn't work that way. I think But that's the whole thing. In a setup like this, you kind of want to be a generalist that just have initiatives, right? And that was what I brought, being a generalist.
I want to actually take a step back and go back to your even like earlier days
Mm.
before you started being exposed to entrepreneurship and investment in Southeast Asia. I know that you were in the US for a pretty long time. So what made you decide to make the move back to Singapore and eventually go back to Vietnam to start this I Hay and other entrepreneurs?
It was not deliberate. I just got pushed back here, guys. So COVID happened. I got an offer, but I was doing, I think it was like a middle office trade op role at TD Securities in New York. But then it was either that or coming back to Southeast Asia and I guess taking a more front office view from my end. And I think for my entire college year, the one goal I had was to break into Wall Street, even though coming from a non-target school, right? I know you go to Babson, so that's like semi-target. UMass Amherst is definitely not even close to being a target school. So that was what I tried to do, and that was my whole goal. But I think at the end of the day, I realized that if I come back to Southeast Asia, at least I'll be in the front and center of doing something I love, which is investment. But the biggest pivot for me was that being in the field of technology. I had back then, my whole thing was industrials and real estate investment trusts. Like those are the equities that I research and then look into the most. So that switch was the biggest one, and now I'm so I think I'm very lucky to be well positioned in this space.
So what was the but for our audience out there, UMass Amherst is a great school. It's not really like non-target school. I think it's a big name for math and computer science in Massachusetts for
It's a
sure.
big name for not being sober, but yeah, sure.
So what was the click? Was there like a moment that you're like, no, I need to make the move from investment to becoming a founder? Because I know that like even though it's still entrepreneurship, but like that's two sides of the table. Where was there a moment that you felt like, I've gained enough exposure and I don't want to talk to founder anymore. I want to be one of them.
So I think the move from being an investor to working and like being part of the founding team of a startup is two realizations for me. Was that so as a VC, you're investing in an asset class, right? And that asset class are tech startups. So you kind of need, people say a lot about empathy. You need to have founder empathy, but it's impossible to have founder empathy if you are sitting in a seat where the power dynamic was so different. Like, for example, when I was a VC and I texted people, they would respond. When I was a startup and before all the fundraising text folks, they don't respond. For example, just that dynamic gives you this new sense of like, oh, so this is what they mean by having founders empathy, because the stress that you go through is a lot. And so that's one. And the second is also, I think at that period, this was before ChatGPT and LLMs come along, right? But I got the chance to talk to the founding team back in the days before the whole product came out. And we were already discussing something we call MGC, which are machine generated content, right? Now it's called generative AI, but back in when I was thinking it was MGC. And I just thought that idea makes a lot of sense, that the world will be flooded with these contents that are not made by human. And the initial idea for us was to build a filter for these contents. Like, how do we filter out, the good MGCs and the bad MGCs, and then the UGC, the human content.
And what has been the biggest challenge or toughest obstacle that you have faced in your founder's journey so far with iHey?
Everything is hard. I think everything is hard, but I feel like so far everything is worth doing. So, like for example, right now the biggest challenge for me is to work with institutions, right? So for so long, iHey as a product, and we can talk about what it is later is a consumer product. So our whole thing was how do we bring this to pockets of Vietnamese users and make them love the product? Now, as we evolve into consumers and institutions where we solve their problems, working with this big, a bit slow moving legacy but giant companies takes a lot of different skill sets, right? Managing the buyers, managing your resellers, just even simple things as pricing. These are totally unprecedented things in tech, right? You can't, it's not like selling software anymore, selling AI, and that's something different. That's my newest challenge so far.
Right. Yeah, let's jump into the product that you are building at iHey. Can you share more about the problem you are trying to solve?
Yeah, this is always evolving, right? So I'll just tell you the idea of why we started. We started with one fact is that in 2023, when we were looking at the biggest AI companies in the world, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Anthropic, one thing we realized that these folks, they can't solve everyday questions of Vietnamese. And when I mean everyday questions or questions that are, about a scandal in Vietnam, about the weather in Vietnam, about, gold prices that changes every day. Gold prices in Vietnam different from the world, right? Or like stock prices in Vietnam, or even things that are written simply in Vietnamese, they are misspelled, they are with the wrong diacritics, things like that, right? And we felt that, oh, what if there is a space there to build what we call a search engine, an AI powered search engine for Vietnamese, right? And the idea then would be kind of like a Perplexity for Vietnam. But what was even more important for us at the time, and this is something that we've talked about, is because our founding team is influenced a lot by Zalo. And the idea is no matter how good your tech is, the moat should be simply tech and product. It should be one of the more fundamental ones, and that is network effect. So that's why we built both a search engine, an AI powered search engine specifically for Vietnam, on top of a social network. So that's basically is iHey. I usually call it the Perplexity X Reddit of Vietnam, right? So that was the story for a while. But then what we realized is that this is a product that people really liked in the sense that in the last year, 12 months, we've grown to 15 million downloads. And now, if you look at, from Sensor Tower or Data.ai, in the AI app category, we are the only Southeast Asian built app that is in the top 5 in terms of daily active user and monthly active user, right? So this is, and all our users are in Vietnam. So there is a need there. And when you become a unique entity where you are a homegrown company in Vietnam and you are at that scale, you are a one in one. And because of that, enterprises, like institutions, the public sector, universities start pulling us in to see how they could work with us to productize that core search engine for Vietnamese for their internal use cases. Okay, that's what we call enterprise search. Yeah.
And you just mentioned that one of the biggest challenge right now for iHey is working with institutions. Could you share a little bit more on that? How is it different, working with like public university, public institutions compared to the private sector in Vietnam?
Yeah. So it's not between public and private sector, right? It's between these entities that are organizations versus you or Charlotte or
Okay.
everyday people. So that's completely different. And usually, as you may have noticed, in the software era, at least, if you are a B2C player, you don't play B2B. If you're B2B, it's very hard to B2C. And our whole team DNA has been a B2C company, as we are builders from Zalo, from Momo, from other companies that have served consumers. We are very good at understanding the trends and the growth engines needed to win the consumer side. But going to enterprise, you need, I guess, a different skill set, right? You need to know how to price, negotiate, work with the buyers, and you have to expect a much slower speed. For example, if we launch a feature that is great, it's viral on TikTok, boom, right? I see instantaneous growth. If we score a first call with the biggest conglomerate in Vietnam, it might take 6 months for me to close the deal, right? The sales cycle could be very long. right? And those are just totally different skill sets. So as an organization, I guess we're building the muscles there, but thankfully in the age of AI, this is much different than selling software, right? Because the cost to produce the same product is lower, things are moving faster, and there's almost an anxiety of like, oh, I need to put AI in my company. So there's a catalyst for buyers to move.
So, do you position yourself as a fully B2B company now, or are you still targeting both, or more like B2B to C eventually?
So as much as let's say if ChatGPT's whole mission and vision is to build the AGI for humanity, right? And the AGI for humanity, if you look at what they are building, it's B2C and B2B and B2G. What we are building is the sovereign AI layer of Vietnam, meaning the consumer, the enterprise, and the government pillars we want to solve. We're like the AI orchestrator for the country, right? And we believe that this is a very unique era when you can't simply win, at least on a national level, by just solving one pillar of the problem. You have to solve the whole country's need, and that it is possible to do it with just one core, stack.
So you say that you are building this sovereign AI tool for Vietnam, I do understand that Vietnam is a big market with 100 million people population, but usually startup in Southeast Asia they would want to go regional or global. So with the position of I as a sovereign Vietnamese AI tool, how do you see yourself going regional or global from?
Right. So let me answer first why going local right now is such an absolutely phenomenal opportunity. And maybe you guys are both Vietnamese, so you might be as aware, but let me just explain for the audience is that Vietnam is going through the biggest change since 1986, right? Đổi mới, because we have a new general secretary and he has done two very big transformations for the country. One is a total governmental restructuring, meaning he cuts from, I believe, 64 provinces to 34 provinces. I believe almost 1/3 of public administration officers are laid off. And as you know, the whole district layer of Vietnam is gone. So directionally, this makes a lot of sense, right? A much leaner governmental body to move faster. But of course, things can't simply change overnight where you can just digitize everything. This creates so much chaos in data and labor that even traditional software wouldn't make sense. The only thing that could solve the country's problem right now is AI, right? And then there's the second catalyst, which is the way the government is now viewing technology, right? The economic playbook is rewritten. Decree 57 and Decree 68, Nghị quyết 57 and 68 in Vietnamese, right? These are for the first time saying that the private sector and especially the technology sector is the forefront to drive the country so that we don't get stuck in the developing country trap by 2045. And because of that, there's so much incentive to bring technology forward. These are sandboxes, tax cuts, expatriates, rules and such, that it creates this whole ecosystem of where, oh, the country right now needs to put AI in almost all division of labor to fix specific chaotic data problems that are now should be and not should be, can only be solved by a local company, because a local company has a data center inside the country, register tax inside the country, have people on the ground, and does not directly conflict with national safety. Okay, so if you think of it that way, that only a local champion can win this huge problem the country is solving, like who would it be? And we want to position ourselves as that player. And maybe just some number for you. So the mandate now for technology R&D in this country and in Vietnam is grew from 0.5% of the GDP to 3% of the GDP, which is a ginormous number. 3% of our GDP is $15 billion, a huge market every year, right? And here's the kicker. If you don't use your R&D budget for your year, next year you lose it. So everyone's like, Like, how do I spend? ChatGPT isn't going to bring someone home to cook up a end-to-end solution for me, right? And there are folks like Viettel AI and such, but they move at a slightly different speed. So what we come is okay, we'll fix up end-to-end solution for you or APIs, and we'll do it at the speed that you want.
Right. Then I'm curious about, let's just say you manage to become the market leader in Vietnam and then, solve all the problems. Let's just say, then after that, what's next? What's your expansion plan?
So the idea is that we thought about this a lot, whether the expansion should go on the angle of consumer or enterprise, right? And I think what we realize now is that enterprises across the world, not just in Southeast Asia, are how do I say this? Wants AI but can't adopt AI. You might have read the latest Bain report where it's like 95% of AI adoption fails in enterprise, right? So for us, maybe the world isn't ready yet. What we could do is use Vietnam as a testing ground, but what the world would be ready clearly is consumer AI. So how do we bring our social AI engine to the rest of Southeast Asia? Right? Of course, there's always a question of localization and such, but it's one of those things that's low cost to try. If it bites, it bites, right? It's not like, oh, I'm going to solve an enterprise problem in Indonesia and have to wait 6 months to figure out if it's possible.
Right. So that's on the vision of bringing the product from Vietnam to the world. On the other side, what do you think are some global trends that you believe Vietnam's AI ecosystem should adopt or adapt to stay competitive in this?
I think the clearest one is, we're a bit past the generative AI era. The keyword everyone says right now is agentic AI, and then of course agentic workflows, which are, by the way, two different meaning. Agents and agentic workflows are different. I think for Vietnam, agentic workflows are what will change the game a lot, and not just change the game, and it will build moats for Vietnamese company. And to maybe explain that further, I mean there are workflows in every company's or government department in the country. There are small workflows. For example, a ward could send a document up to the People's Committee of Hanoi, and their job is to either approve it or send it to another department. That simple workflow is now done either by pen and paper or a software. It's called a cabinet, right? So how do we automate at least 30 to 50% of that, right? By using an agent that is, have the reasoning, crawling, searching capabilities of AI. Why is it important? Because just as I said, our country is being reformed. Because our country is being reformed, all these different committees in different cities, for example, they are facing, a lot of labor problems. Right, and that's where I feel like these are definitely the trends that we should take from the world.
What's missing from the government support in order to enable this transition or transformation of the country, you think?
So I honestly think, first of all, I'm a big fan of directionally the changes that we've made. It's palpable. I can see it in the way people talk. I can see it in the way buyers talk. Though even the way consumers uses us. I think one key thing that we all have realized is that funding, financial support continues to be extremely difficult for Southeast Asian countries and Vietnam in general. Vietnam is getting slightly hotter in the last couple of years simply because there are other parts of Southeast Asia that took a lot of money and there's no return. So now money pours back in Vietnam. But historically, Vietnam has not done a great job when a lot of money pours in it too. So how do we learn from those lessons, and how does the government maybe directionally could have governmental funds, for example, that could really support movement inside the country? Because I think raising money from foreign investors is still a skill set that needs to be acquired and learned by a lot of Vietnamese founders, I guess including myself, right?
Right. So if you could go back to the early days of like the younger you when you just first started this founder's journey, what would you tell yourself knowing what you know now?
If I knew, I mean, I'll just tell him all the wins that I got so that he would just do it quicker. But I think on a lesson perspective, what would I tell myself? Nothing. I don't think I'll tell him anything. I think everything that happened for a reason. And because the whole idea is that when you found these lessons or when you face these like humiliating situation or like painful situations, there's a certain serendipity to it, right? I remember last month and a half ago, I got like literally scolded in Vietnamese by a partner that wasn't even buying my stuff. And this person was just being the hierarchy work culture in Vietnam. This person just scolded me. And I think a different me would have reacted a bit differently. But then I realized that, okay, this is what it's like to have, I guess, either humility or just patience. And these are the things that when at that time I was very not happy, but then it ended up being something that I really cherish because, it's just a good experience to have. It doesn't happen a lot. So I think the younger me, he's also prepared. Like when he came in, he took like half of his pay cut, or like more than half of what I used to get paid, right? He put a lot of stress in his family, for his partner and all of that, but he was ready. So I think nothing I say would make a difference. He's good. He's well prepared.
So just go for it.
Just love the game. Go for it.
You just brought up a very good point on the cultural nuances of doing business in Vietnam. At Quest, we actually also work with Singaporean founders and the Singaporean government to bring startups and companies from Singapore to Vietnam. So I want to pick your brain on maybe like the top 3 cultural lessons or cultural highlights that you want our Singaporean founders to keep in mind when they first come to Vietnam to do market expansion here. What do they need to be aware of?
Culturally, I think I would try my best to refrain from giving any advice regarding enterprise because, as I said, it's not my expertise yet. But what I would say is that Vietnam is a very nationalistic country in a good way, right? Especially in recent year. I don't know about if you feel the same way, but the level of love for the country, I feel like it has increased. And use that as you may, right? There has been very clear business cases of companies going into Vietnam and do the wrong move. The certain milk tea company, for example, that got destroyed. Or if you play the right move, you respect our culture, you respect our people, our government, and the different trends that we have, I think just that nuance alone would win. Like, don't come and think this is a developing country that doesn't know anything. We are quite savvy in what we do. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that because of that surprising savviness, there is always, how do I say this? Vietnamese people are extremely opportunistic, right? And it shows in our tech ecosystem. Okay, we might not have built like 15 unicorns, but how many profitable game studios popped up in Vietnam? Like almost to the hundreds, right? And these are some of the most profitable, fast-growing businesses. And that's just an example of how much we see opportunities, right? So if you work with a Vietnamese partner and you could show that shared opportunity to win quick, I think, and you just have to really know what works for them. For example, for us, I already shared with you guys, is that we saw the opportunity here being that everyone has an anxiety to spend for AI and to do it very quick, right? So that's why we took the path. So those are the opportunities that you have to smell, you have to talk to people. And to do that, you have to be really curious. And to be curious about someone, you have to respect them. And this is something that I learned from being a VC too, right? And the third one actually is relevant to both the first and second one is, a lot of foreigners come in, they hang out with the other expats, right? Maybe don't do it. Maybe, I don't care if it's Tinder or Bumble or, just go to like places, just meet people like real Vietnamese, go travel the country a bit. And if you want to make money here, might as well do that. And you will just understand the nuances that you wouldn't understand otherwise if you're in your little Silicon Valley bubble.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, if anyone's listening to this and about to give me some shit, like, that's your thing.
That's valid though. That's like solid advice. So I have 2 random questions and 1 final question before we wrap up this episode. The first random question is, who's your role model?
The CEO of this company and our chairman, which is another individual in our board, huge role models for me. These guys built Zalo from almost the very, very early days. And they have just this incredible nose for opportunities and initiatives that I still need to learn. So I think those two, and I think the third one is my wife. So the whole thing about me is I'm pretty decent at looking at the overall strategy. But whenever I have those, directionally, I think it's correct, but I give it to my wife just to understand what she thinks. And she would always poke holes. She is a better VC than I am, if that ever comes to be. Yeah, I those are the three people I look up to the most: good people, competent people, and people I want to learn from.
Awesome. The second question is what keeps you excited going forward every day?
I think so. For us, I'll tell you a quick story, right? The 2 weeks ago, we had the opportunity to introduce IHEI to. Well, this happened before, but before we worked with a university called the Ho Chi Minh Academy of Politics. I don't know if you guys know this academy, but any government official, including top ones, have to go through that academy. It's extremely prestigious. Well, it's not known for folks who study abroad like us. Basically, because we worked with them, they asked if we wanted to introduce AI to, rural villages and cities around. So we went to this place called Vân Sơn, xã Vân Sơn. So in the city, if you ask what ChatGPT and AI is, like 70 people, and 70 people raised their hand. When we were there, 2 people raised their hand out of 70. This whole like a lot of people in there. And we were just like, oh, okay, these are the folks that we could solve problems for. These are the folks that they either don't know or they feel intimidated opening up a Gen AI app that sees like English in it and such. You know what I mean? And so that's what got me excited. How do we, in a scalable manner, bring AI to every single underserved pockets of Vietnam and then evolve to a point where even the overserved market, the tier 1 cities, have to and want to use us, right? And those are amazing product problems that my co-founders are amazing at solving. And then my job then is how do we make sure that this company stays afloat, have enough funding to keep the dream going before we eventually become profitable, right? And it's a good journey to do it. If we die a miserable death, at least we tried, and if we win, then yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's super inspiring. And I think I have one last question before we wrap up the episode. If you could ask our next guest speaker one question, you don't know who they are, we don't know who they are, what would you want to ask them? And it's also they're also a founder from Vietnam. I think that's the that's the commonality of all the guest speakers in this podcast. But yeah, we want to take this question and we'll actually ask them the question.
What was the last guy or gal's question then? Tradition. This is a new tradition. That's a tough one. I think, this is a good one for you guys.
Can you help take note?
What is it? Let me frame this question in my head. But the idea is, what are the things an investors could do that would truly make you respect them outside of the realm of capital?
I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think that's something that as a founder, I start to realize like there's a very big distinction between my respect for your capital and my respect for your competency.
Do you have an answer for this question? We would be curious to learn more about it.
It's a mix of things, but what I've seen is I love people. I love working people with two interchanging, complementary characteristics. One is that they don't take themselves too seriously, right? I think not being able to take yourself too seriously is very important because that means you are you're thick skin, but also like you have a love for life. I think not taking yourself seriously has a certain love for life. Yeah, down to earthness, right? And then, but the second one is that you have to be, as in a generalist sense, sharp, right? We all respect people who are sharp, but I think people who are generally sharp, things like, for example, when you meet an investors, there are investors that, ask you all these descriptive questions, which I love to answer, by the way, that's fine. But there are folks who ask you 2 questions and just understand your business model, understand the product, understand all the comms, understand all that. It's just super refreshing. So then you skip all of that and you simply like talk with them strategically, okay, this is why this makes sense to me to do hyperlocal stuff, for example. And those are very impressive folks. Actually, I was just in Singapore. A shout out to Clayton from Process. Guy took me like 10 minutes and he already knew everything, and I barely told him anything. But yeah.
Okay, so the question you would want to ask our next speaker is, what are the things that investors can do to make you truly respect them? Okay, got it, noted.
Yeah, outside of capital.
Capital. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll make sure to report back to you.
I'll give a listen.
All right, I think that was the last question to wrap up our episode. Thank you so much, Anh Hiep, for joining us and for sharing your journey as well as your insight. It was super insightful, super inspiring for us as the people that do this podcast as well. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Questions With. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to follow the podcast on your favorite platform so you won't miss future episodes.
All right. Thank you so much, Charlotte. Thank you so much, Lynn.
Until next time, thank you,
Bye-bye.
Anh Hiep.